At this point, I think we absolutely have to talk about pianos a little bit. The subject of this video is not pianos, but it has to be brought up because composers do write for instruments. You know, we know very, very well that Mozart for one, Verdi for another, when they got a different singer, they changed the music. Mozart certainly, my colleague Neil Zaslaw's book on Mozart symphonies, he got to Salzburg, there was this kind of an orchestra. He got to Mannheim, there was that kind of an orchestra. He wrote for these orchestras. We have here on the stage, unfortunately, only two pianos. I am not a fan of the word fortepiano. The piano was invented by a man named Bartolomeo Cristofori around 1700. He called his invention gravicembalo col piano e forte, harpsichord that can play loud and soft. Sorry, soft and loud. The harpsichord, of course, which had been around 300 years, it was a splendid keyboard instrument, but it plucks the strings. And you cannot play softer by giving too little pressure because it won't pluck, and you can't play louder by giving more pressure because it will already have plucked. That's why you see two manuals and things like this. So Cristofori threw out that mechanism and substituted in its place a mechanism where when you play on a key, a little hammer is flung up at the string. And it's sort of like at the circus that the harder you hit it, you know, the louder, the harder the thing will go and the louder the sound. Now, that's what all pianos are. All pianos fling a hammer at the string. They come up close and they fall. It's called an escapement. If they came up and stayed there, they would block and the string would not be able to ring. So we have here only two. This piano here is a copy of a roughly 1790 Viennese instrument. The builder is Paul McNulty, an American who lives in Czech Republic. And we have over here a copy of an 1870 instrument. This is, one says Steinway on the front. Now, it's very important to point this out. The Steinway company, just as Mr. McNulty, is in the process of making replicas. The Steinway, all pianos in the world, whether they're Bösendorfer, Yamaha, uprights, whatever, they are now all built on the recipe that was established in the United States by the Steinway Company, 1860s, 1870s. In 1871, Liszt got a Steinway, which is virtually a modern piano with a sostenuto pedal even. I read somewhere that this kind of piano is the only thing on the planet that is made as it was in the 19th century. I've been thinking, what about a pencil, a hairpin? You know, everything is different, but this is the same. And if you have an 1890 Steinway, you can build it rebuild it with parts off the shelf. Now, what we don't have here is we don't have a Broadwood piano from 1800. We don't have an Erard, which was Liszt's piano from 1850. We don't have a Graf, which is what Schubert and late Beethoven. There are lots of pianos that we don't have. We only have two, so we'll have to stick with these. But let's look at these. Now, let's play a single note here. This particular kind of a piano has what we call a slow developing tone. If you listen to it, goes up. This, sorry, it's tuned a little lower. Now, why would anybody want that? If somebody here likes Steinway pianos and wants me to go with them to pick out a piano, I would pick out the one with the longest tone. Anything else can be fixed. But is that what we want in K332? That has to be released. If I try to do that here, by the time I get to the second note, the first note has barely got going because this note is swelling. So if I play D, either it sounds like blah, blah, or if I really play it short, it sounds like D, yuck, and so nobody does it. This piano, this is a beautiful piano, by the way. I like it very much. It is designed to do exactly the opposite of what is asked for there. Exactly the opposite. If Yamaha, Bösendorfer, or Steinway produced a piano that decayed that quickly, they would be devastated. It's not what it's supposed to do. There are one or two other things that have to be said about this. One of the things that Steinway did that had never been done before is that they crossed the strings. There's a full iron frame here. The strings are crossed, and the grain of the wood runs this way. In this piano, plus in the Broadwoods and the Grafs and the Erards and the other pianos, you would have the straight stringing and the straight grain. Does anybody have an idea why Steinway crossed the strings?
To get greater length?
Lots of people say that. I had somebody once from the Steinway factory say that to me. Well, let's look at this. Suppose I removed this string here and brought it over here. It would get shorter. Now, in the 19th century, all of the pianos were more or less 8 feet long. And Steinway's first pianos were 8 feet long, as long as they were straight. And when they crossed, they went to 9 feet, which is now the 2 meters 75, which is now the length. No, it can't be for that. We don't know why it is. One of the things that's really fun about instruments is there isn't any information. You know, you can read Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach how to play the piano and Leopold Mozart how to play the violin, but Mr. Stradivari never wrote a book about how to build a violin. So whenever there's a Stradivari that's apart, everybody goes and looks and says, why is the wood thin here and why is it there? It's a lot of fun. Even though Steinway has existed right up to the present, not everybody knows. Here's what I think. By crossing the strings and by crowning the soundboard and running the grain of the wood sideways, you get not just a bigger tone, but you get a very concentrated tone. And one of the things that you can do fantastically on these pianos is bring out voices. It's a wonderful effect. You can't hear the notes I'm playing in the right hand. You just hear the harmony. But it's very, very difficult to play democratically on such a piano. There are two voices here. Unquestionably, it's the left hand that's the good one. There's a Johann Christian Bach that has a tune that's just as good as Mozart's, but it starts with an aspiré. He could have written, it's fine, but this. Nobody plays like that. Of course, this is what people think Mozart is. This is, to me, completely emasculated and really robs the music of all of its drama. And if you play dee do dee do dee do do, this is a very nice piano, and it's all smooth and it's all nice and it's fine. But I believe that the very soul of this music is in those things, because every note in Mozart counts, and it's full of all this variety. And there it is. Now this is a Prokofiev Gavotte. Now why are we going to look at this? Well, we're interested in reading music, right? And if we want to know how to read music of Mozart and Beethoven and even Chopin, we have to go back and read these treatises to find out. But in the case of a composer like Prokofiev, he recorded this piece. Now, a lot of people might say, okay, let's see how Prokofiev plays this piece. That's not the idea. We're going to hear the recording of Prokofiev played it, and the question is, how did he write it down? That's a much more interesting question. Did Prokofiev use the same rules for writing down that Philipp Emanuel Bach and Leopold Mozart advised in the 18th century? And the answer, he does, absolutely. Now, let me just play this. Prokofiev, of course, plays it something like this. You can hear him play. He plays it sort of like that. Let's listen to it. It is a piece written in 1920, recording in 1935. Retard is not there. I claim every other thing is very, very clear, that he does is very, very clearly on this page. Now let's have a look at it again. What do we know about it? Well, this is a gavotte. A gavotte starts on 3. And we know from the sources that therefore you have to hesitate before 1 or it'll be, you can't play D, otherwise we don't know that it's a gavotte. What you have here, that's very interesting. That is a gruppetto. And the sources say that when you have a gruppetto, you should always play it slightly faster than written. Just like you should play all little notes slightly faster and big notes slightly longer. So that's what he does. He's got an accent, he plays the accent. That he notice that this is all under one slur, so that you don't hear the downbeat that time. So it's not. He does it exactly. It's all here. It's all here. If we know how to read it, if we start from the premise that of course you don't ever play evenly. Now, of course, this is perhaps the most important thing that can be said to any piano teacher or conservatory student or anything. Never, ever play evenly. And try to find out how the composer helps you to understand this through his notation. Now, I have to say that this example was given to me by the musicologist, my friend Richard Taruskin. Taruskin, at age 14, was playing this piece and stumbled across this recording of Prokofiev playing it. And he went into his piano lesson and started playing it like that. And the teacher said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm playing it the way Prokofiev plays it." And the teacher said, and this is the good part, "Don't play what Prokofiev plays. You play what's in the score." Now, what would that say about a piece like this? Well, I play it something like this. That may not be right. That may not be right, but the other one is certainly not right. And that, I have to try and familiarize myself enough with Schubert that I understand these things, that I can play something, as they always ask for it, characteristically. Now, Bartok is almost more interesting than Prokofiev. Here is this piece, Evening in the Country. It says at the beginning, this is one of those pieces that is a folk song that he made up. It's not really a folk song, you know. And it says rubato. We're going to hear Bartok play it. I have to admit that I would not have played with quite the rubato that he uses. Some of his eighth notes are longer than some of his quarter notes. But what's much more interesting is the second line, vivo non rubato. He still follows exactly the same rules. He doesn't play but Rather, he does it better than I do. So the gruppetti are still played faster. The dotted rhythm, which is, of course, backwards, he plays the long note longer, the short note shorter, the gruppetti faster, and it says non rubato. Can we have it, please? Hands not together. Non rubato. Listen to the left-hand rhythm. That's enough. That's okay. Even non rubato is never, ever to be played evenly.